The problem is to understand why Rodes Division, why General Lee positioned Rodes Division here at Carlisle. It's 23 miles from Carlisle to Harrisburg. It's about 11 miles to Mechanicsburg. So it's 23, 24 miles. It's a day's march for the whole division to march to the front of the Union fortifications on the right bank of the Susquehanna. Now, the essence of the problem, the historians have to deal with, is this question why Rodes Division was positioned at Carlisle. The only explanation they can come up with in their storyline is that it's got something to do with the idea of Harrisburg. Now, in the original versions of the story the historians tell, the focus was on the idea of capturing Harrisburg, which necessarily involved the problem of crossing the river. Now, the river's 3/4 of a mile wide, and in late June, it's not fordable. And the idea that the Confederate division would be able to seize either the Cumberland Valley Railroad Bridge that spans the river at that point, or the Camelback Bridge, which is a road bridge, to use those bridges to get across. It's just not a rational concept in the reality of military affairs. And so some of these fellows, Professor McPherson being one of the most clever of them, recognizes that hard reality, and they come up with an alternative explanation for why Harrisburg is relevant to the fact that Rodes Division is positioned at Carlisle, and that is the idea that there's a railroad bridge that is of such importance to General Lee's mind that's the idea. And as I explained on the Harrisburg video, that's silliness. The only railroad bridge that spans the river at this point, as I say, is the Cumberland Valley Railroad, and that railroad simply runs from Harrisburg down to Hagerstown, and it's not an east-west, quote, main east-west railroad connection. The main east-west railroad connection is 5 miles north of Harrisburg, where there are 2 railroad bridges that span the river at this location. One of these bridges was owned by the Pennsylvania Railroad, the other one by the Northern Central. The Northern Central comes up along the right bank like this, reaches that bridge and crosses over and goes north. The Pennsylvania Railroad comes up the left bank, crosses the river, and goes through the mountains toward Pittsburgh. That's where the key east-west railroad connection is located, and none of the Confederate forces went anywhere near there. So, for you students, that's the issue. Why is Rodes Division positioned at this point? Now, from my perspective, the obvious answer is for it to fall toward Gettysburg when General Lee orders it to do so. That's its function. General Lee wants to get Ewell's Corps, which involves Rodes Division, and Johnson's division, which is stretched along this turnpike between Shippensburg and Carlisle. He wants to get these two divisions over on this side of the South Mountain. And that's why he's got them up in this area. The problem is that this is a huge undertaking for Richard Ewell, because Richard Ewell has his entire corps of train, is the trains of his corps on this road. Plus, he's got most of Jubal Early's trains. So it's quite a large wagon train. He's got reserve artillery, batteries. He's got a lot of wagons, a lot of horses, a lot of artillery carriages. And without question, these wagons have to be protected. Well, from Ewell's perspective, we have to conclude he perceived a threat to his wagon train from the Union forces that had gathered here at Harrisburg. Couch, Darius Couch, the Union general, had 12,000 experienced soldiers. That's a good-sized division with batteries, plus another 10, 12,000 Union soldiers. These more volunteer types are pouring into Harrisburg from the north and from the east on these railroad lines. So the reason Jenkins' cavalry with a regiment is sent forward here, first to Mechanicsburg and then onward to the front of Couch's defenses, is to demonstrate, is to make a show of the idea that force is going to accumulate, Confederate force is going to accumulate. That's the idea, because Ewell wants to keep Couch fixed here at Harrisburg. He doesn't want Couch to challenge him by coming out here. After all that Ewell has right here is Rhodes' division, which is equal to or lesser in strength than Couch's force. That's 20. Remember, that's a day's march here. Yeah, he's supported by Johnston's division. That's true. So he's relatively secure, but his concern is his trains. Once he moves off, as he does, towards Dillsburg, in response to General Lee's final movement order, the challenge is, what is he going to do with this wagon train? What is he going to do with it? What's he going to do with it? And at the same time, obey General Lee's order, whatever that order is, which if we're in the trial court, it's going to be a couple of days of testimony and lawyer argument before any of these orders come into evidence. Well, this is the road net. And as you can see, the logical thing for Ewell to have done with Johnston's division and with the trains that Johnston's division was escorting, to use Johnston's division would have occupied the entire length of this road, which is about 20 miles. So one of his brigades would have been at the front of it, down here by Shippensburg. His rear brigade would be up here somewhere near Carlisle. And logically, he could have used these roads. He could have used these roads. He could have had one brigade take this way, followed by trains. At the rear of the trains would be a second brigade. The other two brigades could have used this road in the same fashion. Now there's a bottleneck here on top of the mountain. This whole mountaintop is like a cove. It's a flat tabletop. And at this junction point, they'd have to use this one road to come down into Arntsville, and from Arntsville you go to Gettysburg. Instead, Johnson went down toward the Cashtown Gap and then through the Cashtown Gap. About a 25-mile trip out of his way, which accounts for why Johnson is not ready to go into battle against Culp's Hill at 3:30 in the afternoon on July 1. Simply because of the choice of road. Now, why he did that? Why he did that? It's just left up to you, fellas, to try to figure out. The record shows that it was raining through these several days. It was raining. The record does not suggest the rain was a serious, incessant rainstorm. But we have to recognize we don't know what the condition of these mountain roads. This was a good wagon road, no question about it, at the time. This road similarly was a wagon road. Whether the rain had in any way rendered it difficult for wagons to climb the grade to get up onto the tabletop, I cannot say. A second issue is that there were people, mountain people lived up in this mountain. There were communities all in these little areas here. And as you got a 15-mile long wagon train up in these mountains, and while you've got train guards, these people could come out of nowhere, come out of the woods, and hit individual wagons with axes and break their spokes, and in that way cause a lot of difficulty in terms of keeping the wagon train moving. So that's an issue which requires research and understanding. What other factors? Well, the record's absolutely silent. The record's absolutely silent. We'll talk about the history of what do we know about orders. What do we know about orders that passed between General Lee and Richard Ewell? What do we really know about orders? And how did the orders affect Ewell's decision? It made all the difference in the world to the outcome on the first day. It's just amazing that Ewell didn't send that Johnson's division. The obvious thing to do, given the fact that Johnson's division is all along this road, is send half of it on this road, half of it on this road, meet here, pass through to Arntsville as Rowe's division is coming down toward Biglersville and Heidlersburg. So we got to remember the three factors: the condition of the road, the aggression of the mountain people, and the problem of Couch's Union force coming out to intercept and to attack the rear of Johnson's wagon train as it's moving south down this road.